Yep. So discrete time systems, just a quick reminder. So all this time we've been discussing continuous time systems. So we, let me actually draw up a kind of comparison so that everyone kind of, okay, so yeah, so we had continuous time systems, which we discussed up until now, and then we have discrete time systems. Linear, both of these are the linear case, right? I apologize for my handwriting today because I forgot my stylus and my drawing pad thing, so I'm using my mouse. So I hope you can bear with me on that. All right, so we talked about continuous time systems. So what does the state space model look like? It looks like basically we have a differential equation that represents your system, right? And in the discrete case, what we have is what we call a difference equation, right? Where we kind of discretize our continuous space. So what we get is k being some sort of like time step, right? So in continuous space, your time is continuous, which means you have seconds, milliseconds, and nanoseconds, and all that stuff. And there is no real discreteness to time, right? It kind of like how time works in reality. But whenever we are dealing with like electronics and computers and things like that, we have to start thinking of it in terms of discrete systems, because that's the whole point of digitization. You look at time as these discrete steps, which helps us solve problems using computers and things like that, right? So what does a differential equation do? It captures the dynamics in our states, right? It tells us how our states are changing with time. So it's the same concept here. What we have is an idea of how our states are changing with our time steps, right? So if k is our time step, now we know what k plus 1 is going to look like based off of the current state and the input that we provided, right? And then output state is going to, at time step k, is going to depend on c into x k, right? So this is basically the difference in the state space model when you're dealing with a continuous and discrete time system, right? The next important difference that you need to keep in mind is in terms of stability, right? So when you're dealing with stability, we saw that what we need to do is obtain the poles, right? That is basically the eigenvalues of A, right? And we saw that if the poles are in the negative, the real part of our poles are negative, we said that the system is stable, right? In the case of discrete time systems, we take the eigenvalues or the poles, right? And the poles have to be basically the poles have to be inside what we call the unit circle, right? So what we mean by the unit circle is if you have the real and imaginary plane. Imagine you draw a circle with radius 1, right? So it's 1, 1, 1, minus 1. Sorry, minus 1 here, right? So yeah, the modulus of the poles, right? So the poles should fall inside this circle for it to be stable, right? So that's the major differences between a continuous time system and a discrete time system, and the same concepts apply in terms of pole placement. So what we do in pole placement is we try to readjust our A matrix by negative feedback, and we try to place it in, for example, if we want unstable continuous time system to be stable, we try to set the real values towards the negative half of the of the real and imaginary plane, right? Here, if we want an unstable system to be stable, we try to include it inside this unit circle, right? And then, so there's pole placement, and how do we decide what the poles should be? We use something like LQR control to kind of decide what the optimum pole should be for our kind of effort and energy consumption, right? Our energy consumption versus performance, right? To balance those two parameters out. So everything after this is kind of relatively the same. Some of the equations for like the Riccati equations and things like that are kind of different. So more details about that stuff are in your lecture slides. So let's look at a simple discrete time system example, right? So let's take like a supply chain, right? So a supply chain is a good example of a discrete time system, because usually you would look at a supply chain in discrete time, right? Like, for example, either you'd be looking at it in terms of weeks or days or months, right? You'd be like, okay, what is my input and output every week or every day or every month? You'd have some sort of discretized time sample, right? So that's RK, right? There's also another example here about, I think, student marks or something like that. You can go through these examples as well. And what you basically understand is that a lot of things can be looked at as like discrete time steps, right? So if you look at this supply chain, so this could be, so in this particular example, it's like you're building like cinder blocks or like concrete blocks or whatever, but this could easily be any sort of supply chain, like, I don't know, like baking a cake or something like that, right? So you would start off with certain inputs, and you'd have steps in between, and you'd be and then you'll have to decide what the states are, right? So here, for example, you would have x1k, maybe it's the amount of raw material that you dig up from the soil or whatever, right? And then x2 will be some sort of intermediary step between a cinder block and your raw material, and then your final output will be your cinder block, and then you'll have some sort of intermediary step here as well, right? So how a typical supply chain works is you'll have certain inputs, right? And then you'll have certain what do you call it, like not outputs, but like byproducts that you would be kind of getting rid of from your total amount of states, right? So, and then you'll have the actual output in this particular step, which gets transferred to the next step, right? And then in the next step as well, you'll have byproducts that get like let out into the environment, and then you'll have the output of that step going into the third step, right? And then you'll finally have the output. And sometimes in a supply chain, you might also have like feedback loops within steps as well, something like this, right? That comes back into this state. So let's try and see how we can create that state space model out of this kind of like supply chain or discrete time supply chain, right? So K will change either in a discrete way, right? It'll either be like this entire process taking place every day or every month or every year or something like that, right? So this K will represent that discrete time step. Okay, so if you look at how you would formulate the state space out of this, you can see that the next step in our as in the next x1 state in the next step, that's the k plus 1th step, is essentially going to be, right, it's going to be what we initially had, which is in our previous step, which is x1k, right, minus whatever outputs that we had, right? Not outputs, the byproducts, right? So that will be some sort of fraction of x1k, right? Minus whatever amount of x1k that we sent over to the next state, which is minus alpha 1 x1k, right? Plus whatever input we are getting from the previous state, which is uk, right? And if I kind of factorize this and take x1k out, I get this 1 minus alpha 1 minus delta 1 into x1k plus the input. So we know that the next stage of x1k is going to be equal to whatever was remaining, whatever the total amount of x1k in the previous step minus whatever was sent out and whatever was kind of like the byproduct again sent out of the system, right? So what x1k plus 1 is going to be basically this bit, which is whatever of x1k is remaining plus the new input that you're supplying to the system, right? And so it's the same logic in x2k as well. You can just see here what we're having is the input to our p state, to our p step, right? That is, this is our input, and then whatever is left over from the previous step, and then whatever is coming from this stage, right, back into the system. So you can do the same for x3k plus 1, x1, and just like we did for x1 and x2 states, and then we get a bunch of simultaneous equations, which then we can easily put into a state space form, right? Because now that we have the simultaneous equations, we need to put this in the form x, this should be, sorry, capital X, essentially this form, right? We need to put it into this form. So you can see all you have to do is take x1k out, and so our A matrix, basically xk plus 1, which is this column, is going to be equal to a matrix where it's 1 minus alpha 1 minus delta 1. We'll have x1k, x2k, and x3k, right? So this will be 1 minus alpha 1 minus delta 1. There's no x2k term here, so that's 0. There's no x3k term here, that's 0, right? And then our second column, it's going to be alpha 1, and then 1 minus alpha 2 minus delta 2, and then beta 3 will be the third component there, right? And then our final row is going to be, there is no alpha 1 term here, so that's going to be 0, and alpha 2 is going to be our second term, and our third term is going to be 1 minus beta 3 minus gamma 3, right? So there's nothing fancy here. All I've done is written this out in matrix form, right? So once you write this out in matrix form, you will get the state space model essentially, right? So this is pretty much the same procedure we followed when we were deriving state space models in continuous time as well, right? We started off with the differential equations, and then we kind of vectorized it and looked at basically we took the simultaneous equations and made it into like matrix form, right? So here, instead of differential equations, we have difference equations, and we kind of do the same thing and put it into matrix form. All right, so tutorial 7 question 1 is the same supply chain essentially, right? So you can use these parameters, define your A, B, and C matrices, and try to look at the stability, controllability. You can use the same state space function that we used in the previous class to define a discrete time system in MATLAB. So just there's nothing essentially new here compared to like last week, other than this being a discrete time system, right? So I'll give you guys like 10 minutes to try this question, and then we'll discuss it and look at the answer. All right, so let's discuss the answer. Right, so we have this supply chain, and we have some parameters that kind of describe what each of these values are, right? So the first thing you obviously do is you write these parameters down, right? So I've written them down here in the answer, right? I've just used D for delta, A for alpha, and B for beta, and for gamma I've used R, right? And then I've also defined the initial states as given in these parameters. That is basically at k equals 0, where are we starting from? Like, what are the initial states of our system, right? And then k, as you can see, is going from period of 0 to 12, right? Which suggests to us that this is actually k actually represents months, right? So discrete months, like month 1, month 2, and so on, right? So the first step is plot x1, x2, x3, and y against k and interpret the stability of the system, right? So, right, we derived the A matrix, right? So that's just simply based off of this set of equations. If you put this into matrix form, we can see that this is what it looks like, right? We have 1 minus alpha 1 minus delta 1, and then 0, 0, and then alpha 1, 1 minus alpha 2 minus delta 2, and then beta 3 as our second row. So you can see that here. And our third row is 0, alpha 2, and final element in that matrix is 1 minus beta 3 minus gamma 3. And this will be our B matrix, and this will be our C matrix, right? So what we're going to do is, so we have our states changing from month to month, right? And essentially what we want to do is, as the months go by, we want to see how x1k, x2k, and x3k are changing. So essentially what we're doing is we're looking at this open loop system, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to define an empty set of empty matrix to record what is happening over the months, right? So I just do a simple zeros, and since there are 3 states, I'm going to put 3 columns, and I'm going to put 13 rows because we are going from 0 to 12, right? So there's actually 13 elements there. And obviously the first column in these 3 states will, the first row in these 3 states are going to be the initial states, right? So if I plot this out, this is what it will look like, right? And the first column in this empty 13 column matrix is going to be the initial states that we're starting off with, right? So we fill those up first. So if I'm going to comment this stuff out just to show you guys step by step what's happening. So if I comment this out and I run this, now if I look at what X looks like over here, you can see that the first column has been filled up with the initial 3 states of our system. So what we're going to do is we're going to see, as the months go by, how are these states going to change over time. Right now we have this empty matrix, and we are going to fill it up with what's happening to the states at each month, right? So the outputs again are a bunch of zeros. We haven't filled them up yet either, right? So to fill these up, all we're going to do is we're going to create a simple loop, right? And we're going to say that xk plus 1th time step is going to be equal to a xk plus b uk, right? Which is the state space model essentially, right? And so what's going to happen when we do this is that each of the columns in xk are going to be filled up by the state space model that we have of the system, right? And we're going to do the same for yk, and you can see here that we take the previous step. So for example, if I take k equals 1, right, we're going to start off with these as our initial states here, multiply by a, add it to b plus uk, and store it in k equals 2. And then when k equals 2, I'm going to take the k equals 2 value that we did in the previous step and use that to calculate the k equals 3 state, right? And we are just going to repeat that until all 12 months are completed. So that way what we are doing is we are essentially filling up this matrix, and step by step for each of the 12 months we are calculating what the states are going to be, including the output as well, right? And then what we're going to do is simply just plot it just to see what the states are going to look like. So if I run this, we should get a plot of what the states look like, right? Actually, instead of a continuous plot, it's better to do a scatter plot, because these are discrete time systems, right? So you don't really have a continuous kind of connection between them. So I think it's better to do a scatter plot. What went wrong there? All right, so a scatter plot needs 2 components. So I'm just gonna add one, sorry, 0, 1, 12. So I calculate. Let me just double check. Yeah, sorry. So how you do it is you put 12 here and 1 here. X1 row vector of 100 linearly equals endpoints between x1 and x2. Right, so what we need to do is do this. There we go. Alright, so that should be, if you're using a scatter plot, you need x coordinates as well, so you'll have to add that in. So linspace just creates a set of values basically that start at 0, end at 12, and then we can tell it how many discrete steps we want those values to be at, right? So I just have to add that in. Alright, so if I run this, what's happening? Alright, hold on. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. Awesome. So if you look at the discrete plots, which is what we should be kind of Can you guys hear me? I think I lost the connection for a bit. Okay, I hope you guys can hear me now and see my screen. Alright, cool. So if you look at the states, you can see what's happening to the states over time, right? Our output is purple, right? So you can see that this is the purple line, and you can see that's the output, and you can see this is how the states are going to change over a 12-month period, right? According to the model that has been provided to us, right? So what can you say about the stability of the system? By just looking at this graph, you can clearly see that the output is not blowing up without any control. So we can, by just looking at this graph and how the states are evolving over time, we can say that the system is stable, right? We don't even have to look at the eigenvalues or anything like that. We can just look at this graph itself and have a pretty good understanding of the stability of the system, right? But what we're going to do in the next step is actually confirm this by looking at the eigenvalues, right? So if we actually look at the eigenvalues, now we can predict what they will kind of look like, right? So since this is a discrete time system, I can predict just by looking at that previous graph that it's going to be stable. Hence, it's going to be, what do you call it? It's going to be inside the unit circle, right? That means it's going to be, its magnitude is going to be less than 1, right? So if I run this now, you can see the eigenvalues that get popped out, and you can see that the eigenvalues are all less than 1, right? Which confirms that this system is stable, which we kind of had a feeling that it was stable by just looking at this graph, right? but if you look at the eigenvalues, you can confirm that they are stable, right? Because they're inside the unit circle, or their magnitudes are less than 1. Okay, so next question is, can we check its controllability, right? So the controllability matrix is essentially just, this is a 3 by 3 matrix, so it's just B into AB into A squared B, and so on. And then what we have to do is we have to look at the rank of the controllability matrix. So if I run this, you can see that the rank of the controllability matrix is 3, which means it's full rank, which means it controllable, right? You can also calculate the controllability matrix using MATLAB's function called CTRB, right? So that's another way to calculate the controllability matrix. Instead of writing it out like this, you can just use CTRB, and it will automatically calculate the controllability matrix, in which case you have to look at the rank again after you calculate it. So I'll comment this version of it out, and if I just use the CTRB, sorry, this should be C simple O, right? If I run this, you can see that again we get the same answer for the rank. It's 3, which means it's full rank, which means it's controllable, right? So we can also use the state space function that we saw in the previous couple of classes in MATLAB to define a pass the matrices that we defined here as inputs and kind of define a MATLAB state space model, right? But we did this previously using a continuous time system, but the same applies to discrete time systems as well. And what's great in MATLAB is you can define the time units as well, that will help you kind of use this state space system in any way you kind of want, especially if you want to visualize it and things like that, right? So you can define the time units if it's a discrete time system, and it will automatically create a discrete time system model once you provide these time units and so on, right? So once you have the state space model, you can also check stability using the MATLAB functions as well. Like that's, so what I'm trying to say is there's multiple ways to do the same thing, right? You can either look at the eigenvalues straight away, you can look at the graphs and see if it's unstable or not. You can also, if you want to calculate the controllability matrix, you can actually write it out like this, or you can use MATLAB's inbuilt functions. You can even define a state space model, and you can look at its stability using the is stable function, right, instead of looking at the eigenvalues, and that will also give you an answer. So when it's a logical one, which means it is stable. If it was a binary value, the output of the is stable function is a binary value. So if it's 1, it says it's stable. If it's a 0, it says it's unstable. So we saw by calculating the eigenvalues that it's stable. We also saw that when we plotted out all the states of the system, that it's stable. Or you could even use this is stable function to do that, right? So that's essentially it for this question, right? So what we did is we defined a discrete time system, and we looked at it in different ways. We looked at how its states are evolving over time. We looked at how we can create a state space model using MATLAB's SS function, and how to look at its stability, look at its controllability, and so on, right? So now the second question that we're going to look at is a pole placement using LQR control, right? You can do essentially what we did last week, using the same functions like LQR and so on to calculate a pole placement. So we can do a closed loop system and do LQR control, but in this case we'll be looking at a discrete time system instead of a continuous time system, right? So I'll give you guys another 10 minutes to try that out, and then we'll discuss it.